So welcome back, everybody, to the KrakCast. I'm here this week with Dr. Mike and Josh. We've got a really interesting guest for you today, but before we get to him, a couple of quick announcements. No news this week, first of all. You know, sometimes there's just no news. There's not much to talk about. There were a couple of human interest stories. Dr. Mike, you saw the story about the croissant that got mistaken as an animal or that was stuck in the tree or something like that?
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out what the big deal was. I mean, it definitely wasn't as interesting as is it blue and black or white and gold dress?
Yeah, this thing got covered around the world. This is on the BBC.
It was on the BBC. It kind of amused me, actually, that, you know, like a croissant in a tree in Krakow is international news,
Bizarre.
whereas the infestation of savage wild boar just disappeared.
That's true. That's a good point, actually. So, apart from the usual COVID stuff, there just wasn't much going on, so we just decided to skip it. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into our main topic today is something I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. We are in touch with Łukasz Weintuch, who is a city council member here in Krakow. He's going to come on our show at some point in the near future, but he did ask us to kind of collect some questions from our listeners that we can put to him when he comes back on our show. And so we're asking again, I mean, how many times do you get a chance to, ask a question to a city council member? It's kind of a big deal. It's like one level below the mayor of the city, basically. So if you have any questions about, what are the things that we talk about on our show? Public transport and tram ticket prices and cutting down trees and building this and destroying that and just, the infrastructure and tourism and COVID relief money and on and on and on. But it's so, Dr.
Send us some questions, make the KrakCast community look good.
Exactly. So get us some more questions. Send us on Facebook, email, whatever, krakcast.pl. All of our contact information is there. So again, please send us some questions for City Council member Łukasz Weintuch. And I hope in the next month or so, he'll join us here at KrakCast World Headquarters for an interview, and we'll get all those questions to him. Okay, now that that's out of the way, today's episode is, we hope, the first in, actually I should say it is the first in what we hope will be a series kind of based on the different faith communities, different religious communities here in Krakow. We had the idea of inviting people from different faith communities here to our studio just to kind of talk about what their faith is all about, and of course the connection to Poland and to Krakow and whatnot. And we put out some requests to lots of different organizations and churches and temples and whatnot in Krakow and near Krakow. And one of the people who got back to us is Michał. He's from the Church of Jesus Christ, perhaps more informally and maybe better known as the Mormon Church. We're going to call it the Church of Jesus Christ here today. And he said he's happy to come on the show and talk about what being a Mormon is all about and what being a member of the church is all about. And we really appreciate it. And so I'm talking about him like he's not here. He's sitting next to me, actually. So, Michał, thanks very much for joining us here on the KrakCast.
Really nice to be here with you.
All right, let's get to it. Now, you're Polish, right? And
That's right.
You are a convert to the Mormon Church, right? Now, can I assume that you were Catholic previous to the conversion?
Yes, that's right. I was raised and born Catholic, like pretty much everybody in Poland.
Yeah, sure.
But like I told you before, I was well converted into the Mormon Church when I was around 17.
Let me ask about that time. So you were 17, right? So I'm curious about that, about the conversion process. What was it about? I mean, was there something in you that was kind of open to the idea of conversion? Was it something you were thinking about, or was it something that somebody mentioned to you and it kind of like sparked some kind of desire that within you that you didn't know about? Or what were the origins of the feelings that kind of motivated you to make the conversion?
So I think like people in Poland, like we are mostly raised as Catholics, like pretty much everybody here. But it's more of a culture than actual like real faith with most of the people. And I as well was brought up in the culture, and I as well attended the church and following the Catholic Church. That's right, and I was following the Polish tradition. But then, with the time, like you kind of you treat it more as a part of growing up, but you don't really see too much faith and God in it. So that was the same with me. Like I was just more as a typical member who just going to church, but didn't really have some sort of belief in God. But then someday I met missionaries on the street. And we just figured out, we just had a really good chat. I was actually really interested in the stuff they have to say. And they as well had a really funny accent, because as we talked earlier, like Americans, when they try to learn how to speak Polish, they kind of sound hilarious. So
okay, thanks.
yeah.
No, wait a second. Just to clarify, these missionaries you met were Americans who were on their mission, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So they were speaking to you in Polish, right? So they sounded funny. Okay. But even though they sounded funny, apparently they also made you think about something serious, in your spiritual life, I guess.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, we had a really good conversation. And to be honest with you, before I actually joined the church, I was more of an agnostic kind of guy as well. Like, I was officially Catholic, but I have had as well my own beliefs. And I don't know, like, you might notice that Polish people are very argumentative.
No. I've never
I'd
noticed
like to disagree
that.
with you on that.
You're wrong.
Yeah, like we can have really some strong opinions. So as well had my own opinions.
Yeah.
And I found it really interesting to prove that there is no God. And so like my first impression was like, oh, cool. So like now I'm going to have another argument. But I guess something was different at the time, because like that the missionary presenting me his faith, he actually made some good points. And when it was my turn, I was kind of speechless. Like, even though he was speaking a foreign language, I couldn't find really arguments. And of course, after that, sorry, I'm just trying to recall it from my memory how exactly it happened.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm also impressed by just as an aside. You said you were 17 when this happened.
Yes.
And you said you didn't know how to respond, which is funny because most 17-year-olds think they know everything, right? So it's kind of, interesting that you were humble enough to say, you know what, it's a good point, and I don't know how to answer that. So
yeah, as well. And as well, like, it was kind of funny because he as well showed me the Book of Mormon. And like at that time, my knowledge about America was very small. So like I knew where New York was, I knew where Chicago is, but like,
that's a start. Okay.
Sorry?
That's a start.
Yeah, and I know where was Texas. So when they told me about Utah, for example, like it was really, really cool to hear that there are other states.
Utah being the kind of the center of the Mormonism, essentially, in America, right?
Yeah. At the time, I knew that it was very close to Nevada, or right next to Nevada.
Right next door.
Exactly.
Oh, you know what? Before we continue, I just realized one thing I forgot to mention at the top when I introduced you. In addition to being a member of the Mormon Church, you're also active in the organization here. You hold a position. You working with the younger people in the church, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. So going back to the conversion, how long was or how much time passed between this first point of contact with the missionaries and the time when you said, "Okay, yeah, I think this is for me, and I want to join"?
So it was about a year.
And during that year, what did you kind of take your own time to learn more about it, or you just took time to maybe think about it and maybe decide if it wasn't like a temporary passing thing? What did you do during this year?
Wow. So like I was like most of the teenagers, like I was just partying a lot. I was drinking, I was taking drugs and, doing this kind of things. But at one time I had some really bad situation. And so actually coming a little bit back to the time when I met missionaries, like I remember there was one American and because I really wanted to get the Book of Mormon, but I didn't really want to have another meeting with them. Like I was still kind of not very into like giving them my phone number and everything, but I really wanted to receive a copy of the Book of Mormon. So there was one missionary who said, "Okay, I will give you a copy of the Book of Mormon, but first you need to read something for me. And then as you read it, I can promise you that someday you will come to church." And then I thought like, oh, great, now somebody put a curse on me or something. But
voodoo.
Yeah. But it was like a promising scripture. And I cannot really recall it right now, but I just read it because I really wanted the book. And of course, then I took the book back with me. And I tried to read it, but the translation in Polish wasn't as perfect at the time. So it was very hard. Like even in English, it's really hard because they still use the old English like words.
So it wasn't very accessible for you. The language was kind of, the message was lost in the language. Basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And so I just left it, but as well, like my parents were Catholic, so I kind of wanted to scare them. So I just left it like standing on my desk.
Yeah, look at this, Mom.
Yeah, but they really didn't pay too much of attention, so I just put it on my bookshelf. But yeah, and then a year from that, of course, like I was having a normal teenager life. Like I was going to clubs, I was partying, drinking, and doing all of this stuff that teenagers do. But I think it can be a little bit different in America because as well the age of drinking is different. But but I was just having fun. But then as well I realized something in my life that something needs to change. And me myself, like I stopped partying, I stopped drinking alcohol, and I stopped smoking cigarettes. And after doing this for straight 2 weeks, I found the Book of Mormon on my bookshelf. I took it. And then I started reading again. So maybe my grammar improved or my Polish because I as well was a little bit older. But then I found it really interesting. And I actually read in about a week, like a half of the book. And then I decided to call the missionaries that were at the time in Krakow.
And that was the beginning of the process that ultimately led to your conversion. You mentioned your parents. I'm curious, did you ever have a conversation where it was like, hey, Mom, Dad, this is what I'm going to do? I mean, how did they learn about it and what was their reaction?
Oh, yeah, sure. So actually, I started being like taught by the missionaries around November. And then I finally decided to be baptized towards the end of December. Actually, eventually ended up to be the 1st of January.
So new year.
Exactly.
New spiritual life, new year. Okay.
Exactly. And so I told my parents a week earlier, which was Christmas.
And
it was kind of interesting because...
Kind of interesting.
yeah. Like we gathered as a family during a Christmas Eve. And I just found it to be a good time to make an announcement.
Okay.
And I said like, hey, I want to be baptized into a Mormon church. And... of course, they said they asked me if I wanted to think more about it, but I said like, nope. I made my decision. It's Christmas. I don't want to argue with you, so you can accept it or not.
And at this point, you were 18.
Yes, I was 18. Yes, that's right.
Accept it or not, and I guess they did.
They did. They had to.
What can you tell us about? They had to. What can you tell us about the conversion process itself, apart from the actual baptism, which I suppose is the final stage or one of the final stages? What does the conversion process to Mormonism look like?
So I think more of a conversion is actually getting a testimony, because in order to be baptized, like you need to follow certain rules, like you need to follow the commandments. And you need to have like a desire to make a new step in your life, and then you of course can be baptized and receive the gift of the Holy Ghost, which is more like a confirmation. But I think the real conversion actually goes throughout your life. So, because of course you have some like more like harder times, your ups and downs. So I think as well is with your real conversion. Like you kind of can convert it throughout your whole life. Of course, like you decide to be a member of the church right before the baptism, and then you become an official member of the church. But it's more like Jesus Christ thought. Like it's more of a way of living your life till the end.
Before we get into some of the details here, let's go big picture with Mormonism. I say Mormonism. It's the Church of Jesus Christ. There's a different terminology, but they're kind of interchangeable. But more commonly known as Mormonism, I suppose. Now, one more thing I should have said at the beginning, and another thing that I forgot, is that you're not here to speak on behalf of everybody who follows the church, right? You're speaking just for yourself, and so you're not here as the definitive expert. You're just only speaking about your own experience. Okay, I just want to make that clear for everybody as well. Okay, so take us through, I call it like the Church of Jesus Christ 101, like the basics, like the kind of basic questions people ask you, and you have some experience with this working as a missionary, I suppose, what is Mormonism all about? Take us through the basics. You've already mentioned things like baptism and confirmation. There are a lot of parallels with Christianity. Give us the basics. The role of Jesus Christ in the Church of Jesus Christ. Is there an afterlife? Is there heaven and hell? The concept of sin, sacraments, things like this. Give us the basics that we should know about Mormonism.
Okay, so like we talked previously, we believe that the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. So actually, like 400 years before Jesus Christ was born, and we believe that God, he called another prophet, and his name was Lehi. And of course, first he started prophesying that people in Jerusalem, like if Jerusalem won't stop being as a sinful place, is going to be attacked and destroyed by Babylonians. But of course, people didn't want to listen to him. So, and they
told the prophet's name again was Lehi?
Yes, Lehi, exactly. So God, he gave him another task, I would say, to travel to America and to gather his family and to take them there with him. And as well, as you can see, that God, he showed Noah a way to build an ark. Also, Lehi, he received like direct quest from God to build a ship and travel with his family to ancient America.
Is this before there was a United States of America? This is
exactly
long before that.
Yes, yes. So way long before that. And you can well see, if you open the Book of Mormon, there are some pictures about it that present Lehi and traveling with his family to ancient America on a boat, which was built. And then in ancient America, when they arrived, of course, like there, you can see that they as well met the Native Americans living there. And in this way, they as well build an ancient civilization there, which also believed in God.
Let me go through a short checklist here. In Mormonism, is Jesus Christ the Son of God?
Exactly.
Okay. Is there an afterlife in Mormonism?
Yes.
Heaven and hell?
So actually, we have there are three kingdoms, and it's celestial, telestial, and telestial. And so we believe that the higher place is where the God lives, and it's called the celestial kingdom, and where will go all of like the rightful people, the people that were baptized and they follow Jesus Christ. And it's the second place, and it's where when people that were good people as well, they also accepted Jesus Christ, and they were just good people in general. And but they also didn't accept the fullness of the gospel. And then you have the third place, and it's called the Celestial Kingdom, if I pronounce it correctly, where will go all of the bad people. But we believe as well, because God is merciful, like all of the three places are still much better than the life on earth. So hell is more of a like a spirit state, when we know that we weren't as good in this life after receiving all of the knowledge and all of like a testimony about God, because we will be able to as well see him ourselves. It's more of a state that we wouldn't be able to make it to live in the highest glory with him.
Is there something like sacraments, like in Catholicism, baptism and confirmation and marriage and whatever the other ones are,
confession,
priesthood, and when you die, or
last rites.
Last rites. Thank you. Is there something like sacraments as well?
Yes. So we have a baptism, and but the biggest difference with the Catholic Church is that we believe that we need to make our own decision, like Jesus Christ did when he was baptized. So like the minimum age is 8. And it needs to come from a person that wants to be baptized. So nobody can make this decision for you.
So nobody's born a Mormon.
Exactly.
You have to make the conscious choice to enter the church.
Exactly.
And what did you say? At the age of 8?
8. Yes.
So at 8 you can become a Mormon.
Exactly.
And until the age of 8, you are what?
I guess you can just
independent, free.
Yes, exactly. But you're still a member. You still participate if you are born, for example, in in a family which practice which are members of our church, but to become like officially a member and to be in the church statistics, I would say, or data, you need to get baptized.
Something kind of like First Communion in Catholicism, basically. Kind of.
Yeah.
What's the proper term? I forgot to check this. What's the proper term in your church for the equivalent of a priest or a reverend or a rabbi, or the person who embodies the faith? What do you call that person?
So we call him a priest.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, but I think the biggest difference is that like everybody is a minister in our church. So we have many different organizations. Like you mentioned earlier, I am a YSC president, and I as well have a priesthood at the same time. So I do it as my calling, and so basically everybody who is a member in our church, men, can receive a priesthood.
Women cannot be priests in the Mormon Church.
No.
Is this the source of controversy that it is, for example, among the Catholics, or are Mormons kind of settled and agree on the idea that women cannot be priests?
Yeah, I think in our case, like we don't have problem with that. Like we believe that priesthood is something that more allows us to do a different kind of ministry, because besides having like the priesthood organizations, we as well have like women organizations, for example, Young Women or Relief Society, when as well women they focus more on the way that they can help like sisters in the society, in the church, but as well in society in general.
I want to ask about missionary work, which is a very important, I think, obligatory step for Mormons. Is it for men and women, or just for men?
For men and women.
Men and women. So being a missionary, is it 2 years?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 years of missionary work, spreading the faith, going abroad, and just like the missionaries that you met here, performing the same activities. You performed a mission in England, yeah?
Exactly.
Tell us about your time as a Mormon missionary in England, what it was like to do this kind of work, and what kind of reception you got.
Yeah, so actually I started my mission in Preston, where we have a temple as well, and as well a missionary training center, when you have people from like all around the world, like from Philippines, from countries in Africa, traveling to learn how to speak English in 3 weeks, and as well how to spread the gospel in the land of England. And
let me stop you right there before we get into the details of what it's like to be working as a missionary on the street, talking to people. You mentioned the language training. This is something I have to ask about. No offense to you or to any Polish people who learn English, but learning English is not so terribly impressive as the opposite. An English person learning Polish, it's a much more difficult job. And I have seen the missionaries that you referred to earlier, the American people who come here and speak Polish. They speak Polish very well when you consider they only took a course for a few weeks. What is the Mormon secret of language training? Because obviously you know something that most people don't know. These people start from zero and become proficient, or at least good enough to speak on the street to native speakers in a very short time. What are you doing right that we need to copy?
I think the biggest difference is that since I arrived to MTC as well, like I didn't really speak Polish. Like there was no one that actually spoke my language, so I put myself all into English.
Immersion, okay, total immersion. Okay, but 3 weeks, 6 weeks, still. I mean, I can be immersed by, I don't know, Japanese for 6 weeks. I'm not going to speak Japanese fluently, but the Mormons do. I mean, it's amazing.
I don't know, to be honest. Like, it's just, I guess it's like the God's help as well.
Missionary zeal, I guess.
Yeah.
Faith and commitment. Okay, so you learn how to speak the language. You get some tips on how to speak to people, I guess, and how to present the church and whatnot. Take us back to those days when you were on the street in Preston or elsewhere in England, and give us your, what were your kind of strategies for striking up a conversation? What kind of response did you get?
Okay, so I actually went directly to Oxford. And it was like the place where when I started doing my missionary work. And I remember, because we usually have a trainer, so like a missionary who is longer out. And I was very lucky because my trainer was a very outgoing guy, and he didn't want me to wait for too long till I start doing missionary work. And it was actually started all on the train. So like I arrived to London and we were traveling by bus. And then right on the train, he just started showing me how to do missionary work. And we were just speaking with people on the train that were traveling with us to Oxford. And so at the beginning, I was really, really scared. But I could see how easy it was for him and how powerful he sounded. Like he had a lot of charisma.
You must learn a lot about human psychology, and just being breaking the ice and starting conversations and just being extroverted and knowing how to persuade people.
Yeah. So exactly. And then he told me that when you stop people for like 3 or 4 hours a day on the street, it's kind of like you just kind of do it. You don't really think about it. And that's exactly what happened. Like my first day in Oxford ended up just stopping random students and teaching them about the Word of God. And I would say it was really interesting because like Oxford is a university town and you usually get a lot of smart people going there from all around the world. And so, but as well, you could have a lot of people being interested in at the beginning. But as well, there are a lot of students that really just wanted to argue about everything, and I think it was
those would have been the Polish students, I guess.
Those would be like you several years earlier, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, God doesn't really exist. This kind of thing, like
Exactly.
philosophical arguments about the meaning of life and things like this. I'm curious if you had to guess, like out of 100 people, 100 times you said, hi, can I talk to you? Mm-hmm. How many times would people just basically ignore you and keep walking?
In Oxford in general.
Right?
In Oxford or in general?
Whatever you want.
Wow. So like, I think, I remember like my trainer, he wanted me to do split funding. So like I was funding on my own a lot of people. And actually they were like, if somebody from like each 30 people I stopped to have a chat, it was actually really good for me. But of course, when I got bolder and as well my testimony grew about the church and about the things I teach about, I was able to actually almost stop like 3 people, like each third person, or for example, and actually have a really good conversation with them.
A third of all the people you tried to talk with.
Yeah, so
33%, basically.
No. So like every let's say it. So like not every other person, but every like if I stop 3 people, one of them would be
so a 33% success rate.
Exactly.
I think that's pretty good. I was expecting you to say that 9 people out of 10 just ignored you and kept walking. But I think 33% is pretty good. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And so give us like the standard questions or comments people made. I'm sure people said the same things to you over and over and over in England. What did they say to you?
I think the most common ones like, I don't believe that there is a God, because if there was a God, why would so many bad things happening?
Welcome to Oxford. Okay, what's your answer for that, by the way? I'm just curious.
I think like the answer is really simple, like because as well as we believe in afterlife, which is going to be forever. Like we believe this part of life to be more sort of a trial. So like in our way to experience the good and the bad and be able to decide for ourselves. And of course, we need those hard things to happen as well to appreciate the good things which are going to come after this life.
Okay, so there is no God. What's the other common thing you heard there? The kind of questions or objections or kind of people who wanted to argue with you?
Wow, I need to think about it, to be honest.
None of your business. Leave me alone.
Not to be facetious, but what about like did anybody ever bring up, say, like South Park and that Book of Mormon?
Actually, I had a really good story about South Park. So
we don't hear that very often, do we?
Okay. No, like literally, it was my third week in Oxford, and I was doing like this casual finding on the street, and then apparently there was a guy, because like when we are missionaries, we always like dress very smart. Like we always have like slacks. So trousers in English, I guess. And we always like have these white shirts and ties. And
Name tag.
We are exactly, name tag. We are very visible. And so one time there was a guy, he was like around 19 or 20, and he approached us on the street, like in the middle of Oxford, and he started asking us questions. And he was like, "Hey, you're Mormons. Like you were in South Park. I read a lot about your church." He as well saw the Book of Mormon musical. Maybe you heard of it.
I know of it. Yes.
Have you seen it?
No.
Okay, sorry. And yeah, so he started asking a lot of questions about the musical, about South Park, about, for example, if Mormon gets to hell, and this kind of questions. And then we set up a meeting with him, and he was very, very willing to learn. Like he started asking all about like Joseph Smith and about different prophets in our church and about the Book of Mormon. And eventually, like it was maybe 3 to 4 weeks after that happened that he actually decided to be baptized.
There you go. So you meet all kinds, I guess, right? Just one more question about the missionaries. Just thinking about the missionaries here in Krakow. You know, years ago, I used to see them all the time. I'm sure you guys did too. In the Plante. It's been a long time, not only because I don't go out so much as I used to, and maybe because of the COVID situation, but are the missionaries still active here in Krakow? Because I just don't see them at all anymore.
Yeah, so like because of the COVID thing happening all around the world, like missionaries, they are not able to stop people. All they can do is online missionary work. Oh, okay. So it's adding people on Facebook and on Instagram. Different. So I'm sorry you weren't invited yet, but.
Anytime.
Yeah. So that's pretty much how the missionary work.
So once the COVID situation is resolved, we can expect to see the missionaries back here in Krakow. Because I used to see them all the time. I mean, really all the time. Rondo Mogilska, the Plante, different places like that. But it's been a while. But like I said, maybe it's because I'm boring and I always stay home these days. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Okay, so you finish your missionary work. And is that kind of like the one universal obligation among all Mormons? After you finish your missionary work, you are a full member of the church?
Sorry, could you repeat again?
After you finish your missionary work,
so
you are a full member of the church.
So actually, you are a member way before. Like you are a member after you get baptized and you receive the confirmation from the gift of the Holy Ghost. So it's very similar to a communion in Catholic Church. And but when it comes to being a missionary, it's only for members being like between 18 and 26.
But everybody's supposed to do it?
Nope. It's voluntarily.
Oh, I thought it was obligatory. Okay, so it's encouraged, I guess. It's encouraged, but not mandatory. Okay, yeah. I did not know that. All right, let's talk about food.
Lost.
Yeah, not that kind of food. I'm hungry too, but not different. Okay, Michal, the Catholics have their thing about meat on Fridays, and the Jews and the Muslims have their things with pork, and the Church of Jesus Christ has its own dietary restrictions that some people might find, well, a deal breaker. To be honest, alcohol is out. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So we don't drink alcohol. We don't smoke cigarettes. We don't. We drink coffee nor tea.
The caffeine thing is a little bit hard to understand. Is it no caffeine or some caffeine or
coffee.
What?
No coffee, no tea. But yeah, we can drink Coca-Cola.
How about soft drinks? Yeah, soft drinks. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So why is tea out?
So I think when it comes to the word of wisdom, we need to more like that's my own opinion as well. That we need to more look at the times when it was revealed. So, like in 1800s, and it was really common at this time as well when it comes to like smoking tobacco to chew tobacco, and I don't really know exactly like why we received this commandment. Like I can understand very often when it comes to smoking because it's bad. I can understand when it comes to alcohol. I really wasn't able to understand as well why we cannot drink coffee, because like I really like drinking coffee before, and it was really hard for me as well to drop it. But I think as well it's more of a commandment, like because in a way like God gave us so many things, and He was life and many different like pleasures in our lives, but as well He he wants as well give some of our pleasures, I would say pleasures, or like give something from us to as well show our love for him. So I think as well it comes like this way to tea. Like we give something which is in a way like we don't really see a purpose of dropping this, like of leaving this, or as well when it comes to tea. But in this way we can show our love to our Heavenly Father, that we are able to stop doing this kind of thing for him.
So it's not about the logical aspect of it. It's just that it's kind of a self-discipline.
I think, yes.
That kind of like is, as you said, a kind of an expression of love and gratitude for God. Dr. Mike, you got a question?
I just had a question, more of a technicality, because I need to be an a-hole. So is it a zero tolerance for alcohol?
When it comes to medicines and like this, like I don't know, like things that can save your life, or like then of course alcohol is allowed.
Well, what about, because alcohol sometimes naturally occurs in certain foodstuffs that are fermented, or for instance, soy sauce has alcohol in it. I mean, you're not drinking gallons of soy sauce; it's a few splashes, and you're having it for saltiness. It just, because it's fermented, it has a small, minute percentage of alcohol in it.
Yeah, so like of course we can like I said, like medicines as well, soy, and as well like.
I think we're talking Jack Daniels and Johnny Walker here, not so much like grapes.
Yeah, I think like
Dr.
if
Mike.
something can make you drunk, then you shouldn't. Then you shouldn't basically drink it. I think
just
it's more in this way.
A couple more quick questions. I want to turn it over to Dr. Mike and Josh more here in just a second, but I do want to ask about some numbers. 16 million Mormons around the world. 16 million. By far the largest portion of those is in America, of course, just under 7 million. Mexico, number 2. Brazil, number 3. The largest population outside of the Americas is the Philippines, just over 800,000. The European country with the most Mormons is the United Kingdom, just under 200,000. But looking at these numbers, Michal, I noticed something really weird. And it was really interesting for me to learn that in terms of percentage, not raw numbers, but in terms of percentage of the entire population, that some island nations in the Pacific Ocean, Tonga, Samoa, American Samoa, like in Tonga, 62% of the population is Mormon. In Samoa, it's like 42% of the entire nation, the entire island. In percentage terms, that's amazing. I had no idea. I think most people listening now had no idea. Is there any kind of explanation for this, for why these countries in the South Pacific have these massive Mormon population, percentage-wise, massive Mormon populations?
Yeah, so I don't have an answer that I'm sure of. Well, like what I've been thinking is like two things. That one of the reasons is that the missions there started quite early, so like still in early 1800s, and as well we have a church university. It's called BYU Hawaii,
Brigham Young University, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And you have a lot of people from that countries going there to work. Because
I think being a missionary in Tonga is pretty nice. I think there's a lot of volunteers to go to Tonga and convert people. That's my theory on this. Much better than going to, I don't know, Kazakhstan or whatever. No offense, Kazakhstan. I think.
Very nice.
Josh, I've got one last question for Michal, but I'm going to hold on to it. Josh and Dr. Mike, other comments or questions for Michal and the Church of Jesus Christ?
Well, I have another awkward question. This is about one of the...
This is what you do, is it?
It is.
You specialize in these questions.
It's about some of the stereotypes we have with members of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. You know, the issue of polygamy.
Can I take this question, Michal? I mean, Dr. Mike, I know it's aimed at him, but I got to step in here because question of polygamy. And I was familiar with this before the last week when I started reading about it in preparation for this. The question of polygamy, this is like I'm happy for Michal to correct me. You know, I'll defer to your knowledge, Michal. But the question of polygamy, this is something in the pop culture, like for cheap jokes to make about Mormons. This issue was settled within the Mormon Church a long time ago.
That's why I said stereotype
it's
issue.
It's illegal in like 10 different ways all over the country, all over Utah. And yeah, there are some like split factions of like fringe elements of the Mormon Church that still do it. Yeah. But I mean, just like there are fringe elements of every religion that have, it's just, I don't know. I find it kind of tiresome, to be honest. The whole thing. I mean, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Yes, if you go out in the woods in the backcountry Utah, you can find a guy that has 6 wives or whatever. but the local authorities are not happy about this, and they don't encourage it, and it's not legal, and even the Mormon Church frowns on this, Michal. So again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but
sure.
Sorry, Dr. Mike, but it just I have this thing for the making fun of people.
I kind of agree with you on that. I just wanted to bring it up because it's one of those things that people always bring up.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Like I've been asked these questions a lot as well in England, but like it was this question like, wow, again? Yeah. Again, you transfer for it. So
here we go again.
Yeah.
So what's your answer for the polygamy thing?
I think I don't really have I have my own opinion about it as well. Like there are as well a lot of like official church statements, and as well like one of them is like we don't practice anymore polygamy, and it was way a long time ago. Like for sure you know more about American history than I.
But it's based on I don't know if it's Joseph Smith or the Book of Mormon, but it's based on something. So it wasn't created out of thin air. It was the word of someone in the church, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, when it comes to the Book of Mormon, like, actually, you can even read some parts that speak against it. But as well, you can find the polygamy in the Old Testament happening, and
exactly, yeah.
King David had a fairly substantial number of wives, didn't he?
Exactly. And but I think what I want to focus more when I think of polygamy myself. It's as well the fact like you can find in the Bible, but as well when you look at the history of the church at the time, it was like really strong. Like a lot of bad things were happening to church. Like many men were murdered in misery when they as well bought their lands and they were driven away by the people living there, so they wouldn't get enough as well political power at the time because our church was as well against the slavery, which people at the time in Missouri were like, they didn't want the slavery to be over. And a lot of men were dead. And if I'm correct, when it comes to American law, many women as well weren't really able to have their own land as a possession. So... And we had a lot of women at church, like they weren't killed.
So it was kind of a group survival strategy in a way? Is that the idea?
I think as well, because it was, when I was reading the story of Joseph Smith, it was really hard for him as well to receive a revelation about polygamy. And as well, he knew it happened in the Old Testament. But in some times, God, he allows people, as well in the Old Testament, to have polygamy. Even though I believe it's not, like I wouldn't like to have many wives, like that's my honest opinion. And even though I don't completely as well agree with it, like there are times in the Bible when polygamy is allowed. So I think it may be in those specific circumstances, like the polygamy was allowed by God as well in the church.
There's polygamy in the Muslim world today, and very few people make jokes about them, but suddenly we think polygamy when we want to think about Mormons. It's weird. I don't know how it works out that way, but it has. Can we go back to numbers for a minute? I forgot to ask about Poland and the number of Mormons in Poland. Before we started recording, you mentioned that it's roughly 4,000 nationwide, right? Yeah. 4,000. I don't know how many here in Krakow, but what kind of, how should I say, you're involved with kind of missionary activity in your own country as well, right? You're here to expand the membership in the church here as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can compare it to England or compare it to other countries, but how tough is it to bring people like to make the same conversion you did from being a Polish Catholic to being a Polish Mormon?
So when it comes to my experience in Poland, like it's really, really tough because like you have usually two kind of like people in Poland. Ones which are very strong Catholics and the other which are very opposed to the Catholic Church. So ones that believe that there is only like the Catholic Church and that's the only church which is true. And the other people who believe that everything is bad because the only church they know about is the Catholic Church and they have some prejudice against it. So because of that, and as well as something what I saw very like, and I was really impressed about in England, is that the culture is very multicultural there. Like you have people from all over parts of the world with many different backgrounds. And I was able to hold a lot of really good conversations with with like Muslims, with Jews, and from people with many different parts without any problem. But in Poland, I found it more difficult because people as well are much more reserved. And so growing the church in Poland is really, really slow. But in England, most of the people that are willing to accept the church, or are willing to join the church, are from like foreign countries like China, which are more secular than I would say religious.
So conversions in Poland it's a tough job.
Yes, that's true. It's really tough.
My last question for you. I've been thinking about how to phrase this, and I'm still not sure. So bear with me if it doesn't come out right. I'm curious about this, and I'm going to ask this to everybody who joins us as part of this series. I mentioned earlier we want to have people from many different faiths to come in, and I'm going to ask everybody the same question. As a believer, right, and not just in Mormonism, just generally, forget about Mormonism, just as a believer in a higher power and in God and salvation and everything we talked about, how would you express what this does for you, right? What do you get out of being a religious person that maybe a person who is not religious would not understand because they don't have the same feelings that you have? What do you get out of being a member of a faith community like this?
I think something what had the biggest impact on me as well during my conversion was actually following Jesus Christ. Because if you like take all of the churches out as well, like all of the organized religions, and you just focus on the Bible, you can actually find a lot of good values there that are being as well taught now, but by different conditions. And I think something what had the biggest impact on me was actually studying more about Jesus Christ and the values that he was teaching people. Like, for example, being as well a good person, being honest, or as well the golden rule. That was something that helped me to see the world differently and to focus as well on other people and to empathize with them. That to take away like my pride, and as well to take away my like arrogance, or I would say like all of those bad traits.
To be humble, I think.
Exactly. To humble myself, and as well to put, I would say, to become another man, to become more like Jesus Christ, and to be more open with people. And it's something that really helped me to open my eyes. And after having this difference, I saw how actually benefited my life and made me a happier person, and as well I saw that people are are happier around me. So so like how much joy can bring ministering to other people or doing service for them.
If someone wants to learn more about the Church of Jesus Christ generally, or specifically organizations here in Krakow, where can they go to learn more?
So they can do it as the official church website is called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And you can basically find everything what you need to know about our church there.
And I think if you Google Mormon, just Google Mormon Krakow, your location comes up. It's on Prownicka 4. And what will they find? If someone goes to your office on Prownicka, what will they find?
And if you come there, you can just check our website. You can find some contact, because it's, wow, I don't know how to say this. Like, it's
just like administrative offices?
Yeah, so no, it's a chapel, but...
Uh-huh. So if people really want to learn more, like if they want to talk to you, it's necessary to kind of contact you first via the website.
Yes, exactly.
Or the phone number, which also comes up, by the way, if you just Google Mormon Krakow. Well, Michal, thanks very much for joining us. I think we all learned quite a bit today about the Church of Latter-day Saints, Church of Jesus Christ, the Mormon Church, whatever you want to call it. We appreciate you coming in, and maybe you'll come back sometime to talk more about more about religion and faith and things like that.
Yeah, cheers. It was really nice to be here, and I always like good questions, and I really enjoyed being in this podcast.
We appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. KrakCast.pl is the website. All of our back episodes are there. We're reaching like 320 episodes or something like that now. So check them out if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time on the KrakCast.